you're getting ready to file a VA disability and compensation claim, there's something I think you need to really understand first. Not all claims are the same. A new claim, an increase, a secondary claim, and a supplemental claim, and a presumptive claim are all different types of claims. And if you don't understand the differences, the process can get confusing before you even ever get started. Veterans will sometimes say, I think I'm going to file a claim. But depending on the type of claim, that can mean several different things. You might be filing for a condition that you've never claimed before. You might already be rated for something and believe it has gotten worse. You might be claiming a new condition that was caused by something that you're already service-connected for. Or you might be trying to file for a claim that the VA has already denied. Each of these claims are different. And depending on which one applies to you, the evidence you need and the way you think about the claim may be different. So in this video, I want to walk you through the main types of VA disability claims in a way that actually makes sense before you file. This is not meant to be an in-depth legal discussion. It's more of a foundational video. Before you start filing a claim, uploading documents, or submitting paperwork, you should have at least the basic understanding of what kind of claim you're actually filing. Quick disclaimer here before we get into it. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accredited claims agent, and I'm not a VSO. I'm just a veteran sharing information based on my own experiences, my own research, and the things I think other veterans should definitely understand. But always, you should do your own research. Verify anything that applies to your own situation. And if you need help, consider working with an accredited representative. So, let's get started with the basic question. What is a VA disability and compensation claim? You're basically saying, I have a medical condition. I believe it's connected to my military service, or I believe I've already been rated for a condition and it's gotten worse, and I want the VA to review it. Now, in developing a claim, there are a few basic pieces involved. First, you need to have a current medical condition, self-explanatory. You need something that connects your condition to your military service, and this is key. That could be an event, an injury, an illness, or an exposure, or something else that may have happened to you during your service. A new claim is where you're asking the VA to consider a condition that you've never been rated by the VA for. Some examples of this might include tinnitus, a back condition, a knee condition, PTSD, migraines, sleep apnea, or any other condition that you believe is connected directly to your military service. Now, a new claim does not always mean the condition might be new to you. You may have been dealing with it for years. It just means that the VA hasn't made a decision on that specific condition before. So another example is you might have had a condition before your service, such as asthma. Let's say your asthma was stable when you first enlisted, but during your service, because of certain exposures or environmental conditions, it got worse. In this situation, you may be looking at whether your military service aggravated that condition. This can also be part of a VA disability claim. So let's focus on the new claim. Let's say you've never filed a claim for your back. Okay, this would be a new claim. Or you've never claimed migraines. That would also be generally a new claim. The important thing to understand with a new claim is you're trying to show the VA that the condition exists and that it's connected to your service. Service connection is key here. You're not just saying, well, I hurt, or I have this condition. You're actually asking the VA to decide whether your condition is in fact related to your military service. Now, with a new claim, you need to think about some things. Do you have a current medical diagnosis? Do you have a medical history for this condition? Did something happen in your service that caused or contributed to this condition? Most importantly, was it documented? If it wasn't documented, do you have other evidence to back up your claim? such as a personal statement. How about buddy letters? Do you have private medical records? Do you have an independent medical opinion, also called a nexus letter? Can you explain when the issue started and how has it affected you? Now, before we get too far in the weeds here, I want to clarify something. Not every claim has to have a perfect paper trail. Let's face it, a lot of us veterans didn't go on sick call. A lot of us veterans didn't seek mental health treatment while we were serving. I mean, let's face it, most of us just pushed through the pain. We didn't complain because that was the culture. We didn't want to look weak, and we didn't want to be that person that appeared to be slowing everyone else down. So yes, there's going to be gaps in your records, but that just means you need to think more carefully about how you explain your claim and what evidence you can provide. The more clearly you can explain the condition that you're claiming, why you believe it's truly connected to your military service, and how it affects you now, the easier it will be for the VA to understand what you're asking them to review. So that's the first type, a new claim. Again, a condition that the VA is not rated on you before. The next claim is an increased claim. Now, this is very different than a new claim. This is when the VA has already service connected you for a condition, but you believe that the condition has gotten worse. So again, let's say you were rated on your back for 10%. Now your back is worse. Maybe its range of motion is worse. Maybe you have more pain. Maybe it affects your sleep or your work, your ability to drive, or even your ability to do normal things around the house. In that situation, you might consider filing for an increase. You're not trying to prove from the beginning that your back is connected to service. The VA has already granted that service connection, right? They gave you that 10%. But what you need to focus on now is how is that condition affecting you today? What symptoms have gotten worse? How often do the symptoms occur? How does it limit you? This is very important. Have you had more treatments? This is also important. Are you taking medications? And how has your condition changed since it was last rated? The current evidence that you have matters. Old records might show that you've had the condition, but an increased claim is about what's happening now. So if you're filing for an increase, think about any recent evidence that you can gather. Recent treatment records, recent imaging or testing, any medication changes, impacts to your work or your daily life, the frequency and severity of your symptoms, and any other documentation that shows that the condition has worsened. Now, an important thing to mention here, when you file for an increase, the VA may take another look at the original condition. That doesn't mean you should be scared to file for an increase, especially if your condition has truly gotten worse. But you should understand that you're asking what the VA to do. You're asking the VA to evaluate the current severity of a condition. So don't file these increases blindly. Make sure that you can truly explain how the condition has gotten worse and how it affects you today. Okay, that's an increased claim. The next type is what's known as a secondary claim. And this is one I think a lot of veterans need to understand better. A secondary claim is when you're claiming a new condition that was caused by or aggravated by a condition that the VA has already service-connected. Again, as an example, maybe you have a service-connected back condition, and now you have nerve pain that's running down your leg. Or maybe you have a service-connected knee condition, and because of the way you walk, you start having hip problems. Or maybe medication you're taking for a service-connected condition causes side effects or creates other medical issues. These are the kind of situations where a secondary claim might come into play. The important thing to understand for a secondary claim is a secondary claim is not just saying you have two conditions. You're saying you have one condition that is connected to another that the VA has already service-connected. A solid link between the two matter. For a secondary claim, the question is normally going to be, Did the service-connected condition cause or aggravate a new condition? Aggravated is an important word here. It doesn't always mean that the service-connected condition created the problem from nothing. You definitely are going to need medical records. You're definitely going to need a medical opinion. You're going to need documentation showing how the two conditions are directly related to each other. Because just having both conditions doesn't automatically make one secondary to another. So let's say you have that service-connected back and you also have headaches. Does that mean that the headaches are automatically considered secondary to your back? No. There needs to be some kind of medical connection between the two. So with a secondary claim, you're going to want to ask yourself, what am I already service-connected for? What new condition am I claiming? How are they connected? Do I have medical evidence supporting that connection? Can I clearly explain the relationship? This is the basic idea of a secondary claim. The next type of claim is a supplemental claim, and this one can get rather confusing. A supplemental claim is generally used when the VA has already made a decision on a claim, and now you have new and relevant evidence that you want the VA to reconsider for that claim. So let's say you filed a claim for your back condition and the VA denied it. Maybe the VA denied it because they didn't see enough evidence of a service connection. Later, you obtain new medical records, a diagnosis or medical opinion, or some other form of evidence that the VA didn't have when they made the original decision. In this situation, you may be looking at filing a supplemental claim. Now, a key phrase for this is new and relevant evidence. That doesn't mean you're just resubmitting the exact same information for an already decided claim and hoping that the VA changes its mind, because they won't. You're bringing something new to the table, something the VA didn't previously consider. And most importantly, it needs to be relevant to the reason as to why the VA denied the claim in the first place. For example, if the VA denied your claim because there was no current diagnosis, then a new diagnosis may be relevant. If the VA denied your claim because there was no link to your service, then a medical opinion addressing that link may be relevant. If the VA denied your claim because they didn't have certain treatment records, then those records might be relevant. This is where it's important to read your VA decision letters. It's not just looking for the word denied and then throwing it away in a drawer somewhere. You need to understand the reasoning behind that decision. And I know these letters can be frustrating. They can be long and they can feel very repetitive. And sometimes they're written in such a way that just doesn't feel very clear to understand. But the decision letters will usually explain why the VA has denied your claim. And that explanation can help you understand what evidence you might be missing. So if you're thinking about filing a supplemental claim, you definitely need to understand why the VA denied it in the first place. And again, a supplemental claim is generally for a claim the VA has already decided, and now you have new and relevant evidence for the VA to review. And finally, let's look at a presumptive claim. A presumptive claim is where the VA recognizes that certain conditions might be presumed to be connected to certain types of service. This could be based on things like where you actually served, when you served, certain exposures that you were exposed to, or any other qualifying circumstances. In a nutshell, if you meet the service requirements and you have a qualifying condition, the VA may presume that condition is service-connected. Now, that doesn't mean there's no evidence involved. And more importantly, it doesn't mean that every presumptive claim is automatic, because they're not. But it may change how a service-connected condition is looked at. Some examples of these presumptive conditions might be Agent Orange exposure, Gulf War service, burn pits, toxic exposures, and certain chronic conditions. And any other situations where the VA has established a presumption. I'm not going to go very deep into all the presumptive conditions in this video because it can get really complicated. And the rules depend on a lot of factors. So again, it could be when you served, where you served, what conditions you have, and what the VA currently recognizes as presumptive. But for this video, the main thing you need to understand about a presumptive claim, it's based on the VA recognizing that certain conditions may be linked to certain service circumstances. If you think you may have a presumptive condition, you will want to research the current VA rules and look at your service history. Make sure you understand what the VA requires for that specific condition. Think the PACT Act. In the end, if you don't understand what you're asking the VA to decide, it becomes a lot harder to know what evidence you might need. Another mistake that veterans make all too often is filing too general. They know that something's wrong. They know that they're dealing with pain or symptoms and problems that started during or after their service, but they don't always clearly explain what they're claiming or why they believe it's connected. And I understand why this happens. This process can be quite confusing. The forms that we have to fill out can be intimidating. And most veterans, honestly, were never taught how any of this works. We were just kicked out and on the street. One more thing I'd like to briefly mention before we wrap this up, and that's what's called an intent to file. Now, I'm not going to go deep into it here because we'll talk about the filing process in the next video. But an intent to file is an important step if you're not ready to submit the full claim yet. In basic terms, it lets the VA know that you intend to file a claim. And if you complete the claim within the required time frame, it may help preserve an earlier effective date. But we'll cover more of that in the next video. But I wanted to mention it here because if you're still gathering evidence, thinking through your claims, and trying to understand what type of claim you need, you may want to look into the intent to file before waiting too long. So let's do a quick recap. A new claim is for a condition that the VA is not ready for. An increased claim is when you already have a service-connected condition and it's gotten worse. A secondary claim is for a new condition that is caused or aggravated by an already connected condition. A supplemental claim is used when the VA has already decided on an issue and now that you have new and relevant evidence to maybe change their mind. And a presumptive claim is where the VA may presume a connection based on qualifying service, location, exposures, or any other recognized circumstances. In the next video, we're going to take this a step further and walk through the actual process of filing a VA disability claim. We'll talk about what evidence you need to gather, what areas you need to focus on before submitting your claim, how an intent to file actually fits in, and some things that may also help you avoid the confusion during the process. If this video helped you, consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. Also, share it with another veteran who might be trying to figure out the VA claims process. And always, do your own research. Get help if you need it. And don't just file your claims blindly. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next video.